Welcome to Chabad Inspiration. In Jewish history, many books were written about Jewish ethics. Many of them are based upon the concept of teaching a human being that the physical life is nothing more than fleeting pleasures, that the physical world is nothing more than a facade and it's hiding the truth, and that nobody lives forever and so on. It's meant to make you lose your interest, so to speak, in physicality and materialism because it doesn't last forever anyway and so on. On the other extreme, you have certain books that talk about in Judaism about the loftiness of the holiness of God. And they try to inspire you, ignore the physical, not because the physical is bad, because you have something so much better, heaven. Essentially telling you, seek the heavens, look upwards, and just don't worry about the here and now. Rab Shneir Zalman of Liadi, the founder of Chabad, didn't really go with either of those extremes. The Alter Rebbe was looking for the pathway for the average intermediate person, which he calls the Beinoni. The average person, says the Alter Rebbe, has desires, has wants, has interests. The physical world appeals to the person. You can't just say to him, you're living in a dream world, it's reality. So you can't just dismiss it. So how do you expect a person to live an ethical life in accordance with the wishes of the Creator and at the same time reconcile that with all of the pleasures and temptations that the physical world offers? The Alter Rebbe comes up with a revolutionary pathway which is unique to Chabad, and he condensed it into 53 chapters. And in these 53 chapters, the Alter Rebbe says you will find all the answers to all your questions. And if you can't find it, ask the elders and the leaders of the community. They will help you find within these 53 chapters all the answers that you need. In the following moments, I would like to share with you a little bit of a taste of the Alter Rebbe's general outlook and the framework with which he works throughout the entire book of the Sefer Tanya, the Holy Book of Tanya. The Alter Rebbe begins by quoting the Talmud, which teaches us in the third section, Perek chapter of Nida, where the Talmud says that before every soul is born, we are administered an oath. Heaven administers an oath to every single one of us, to every soul before we are born. And the oath is, you shall be righteous when you're going to be born into this world, and do not be wicked. Tihi tzaddik v'al tihi rasha. Be righteous tzaddik and do not be a wicked rasha. And those are the opening words of the Tanya. And the first word is Tanya, we have studied in a certain section of the Talmud. And therefore, the book is known amongst one of its three names as the Book of Tanya. Let's study together a little bit, at least a taste of the first few lines. The Alter Rebbe says in the opening lines of Tanya, Tanya b'sei Perek Gimel de Nida, we have studied in the third chapter of Nida, Mashbiyim Isai, we make the soul swear before it comes down into this physical world, before birth, Tihi tzaddik v'al tihi rasha, be righteous and never be wicked. And even if the entire world is going to say to you, wow, you're living such an amazing good life, you're an ethical good person. Nevertheless, the oath continues and says, you should continue to view yourself as a rasha, as a wicked person. Asks the Alter Rebbe, how can you do that? How can you tell a person to walk around feeling and thinking of themselves as a rasha, as a wicked person? You're turning the person into a depressed human being. If he's got a good soul inside and he's thinking of himself, I was told that I have to view myself as a rasha, as a wicked person, it's not going to bring to anything good. Asks the Alter Rebbe, v'tzarich lahavin, we must understand. And he asks two questions. First of all, first of all, we have studied the contradiction to the above statement. And in Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 2, it reads very clearly, do not view yourself as a rasha, as a wicked person. So here the Talmud is telling us, on the one hand, you have an oath, be righteous, do not be wicked, but always view yourself as wicked. Even if the entire world tells you you are not wicked and you're a tzaddik, continue viewing yourself as a rasha, a wicked person. And yet in Ethics of Our Fathers, we are told the opposite. Never look at yourself as a rasha, a wicked person. Two extremes, two opposites, a contradiction. And secondly, the Alter Rebbe says, V'gamim yebein of kirasha. In addition to the first question of the contradiction, in addition to that, the Alter Rebbe asks a practical question. If a person is going to walk around seeing himself in his own eyes as a rasha, as a wicked person, yeda lavavai, he's going to feel bad in his heart. V'yiyah atzev, he's going to be sad. And he won't be able to serve God with happiness and gladness of heart. And if you're going to tell me that you're not going to feel bad about it, you're going to ignore your feelings, well, that may lead you to irreverence. If you're going to dismiss your emotional feelings, that you feel bad, that you're conducting an inappropriate life, and that God has no pleasure from you because you're wicked, and nevertheless you're told, don't worry, ignore your emotions, then what's going to happen to such a person? He's ignoring the fact that of his misconduct, so to speak. That's only going to lead, one bad thing is going to lead to the next. So how does this work? Where does this bring you to a ethical life as Torah demands from all of us? When we move to chapter 13, after the Alter Rebbe already explained that every person has two souls, not one. One soul is called the godly soul, nefesh elikis, because we are children of Almighty God, and like a child who has a part of his father in him, so too does every Jew have within him a part of God himself. Chelik elokam mimal mamash, literally a part of godliness. It does not mean that we are each a piece of God and you can worship the individual. It means that every person has godliness in him, not that he is a God. But nevertheless, at the essence and the core of our existence, we are godly people. On the other hand, we are also given an additional soul, which covers up and obscures the beauty of the original soul, the godly soul. And the second soul is called Nefesh HaBahamis, the animalistic soul. It has many reasons for that name, but amongst them, as the Alter Rebbe writes elsewhere, it's because just like an animal, whatever it wants, it has a very powerful drive to see to it that he will receive all of his wishes passionately. So too does the animalistic soul have a drive just to attain all of its pleasures. And that, unfortunately, sometimes obscures what the godly soul wants, and now you have a battle going on, raging inside the human being. You have two souls, each one trying to dominate and control the human body and the human psyche. And the beauty of life is that we get to choose, by freedom of choice, who are we going to follow? The good and the holy, or the bad and the ugly? And that is a decision that we have 24/7, because each of these souls is always pushing us to their direction, inspiring us to go in that direction. We are tempted by sin, and simultaneously the godly soul is reminding us of who we really are, and therefore we are the person, so to speak, that has the choice in the middle to decide, am I going right or left? Am I going to night or to day? To good or to bad? To bitter or to sweet? These are the choices that every person has, and the beauty of life is that we get to make the decision and decide our own destiny. Having explained all of that at length, Reb Shneir Zalman finally arrives to chapter 13, and in the middle of the chapter he addresses the opening question, and he states, however, since on the left side of the heart a person has within him an evil soul, an Yetzer Hara, an evil inclination, which is driven by the animalistic soul, and therefore it wants all the desires and passions that people have in life, and not all of them are very kosher, shall we say, and each one wants to dominate entirely the human being's existence, his mind, his thoughts, his emotions, his actions, and so on. Says the Alter Rebbe, however, this is the reason why you are called kir rasha. You should view yourself like a wicked person. In the Hebrew, it says kir with the letter kaf. Kaf is as if. It's not that you are, as if. What's the as if? Kir rasha, says the Alter Rebbe. You know why? Lachin nikra kir rasha? Because even if everybody, the entire world tells you are conducting yourself in a very ethical life, like a tzaddik and a righteous person, nevertheless, but v'lei rasha mamish, not literally that you are a wicked person. You are like a rasha. Why? Consider yourself to be like the average person. And as he said before, the average person in his heart, he still has the temptations to commit sin. He doesn't do the sin, but he's tempted by sin. So the fact that within your heart you still have a dark side, which is tempted to sin, therefore you are like a wicked person who is also tempted to sin. The difference is that the wicked person actually actualizes the sin. And the Beinoni, the intermediate person of Tanya, is virtuous, and he overcomes the temptation, and he pushes the temptation aside, and he makes the right decision and the right choice, and he conducts himself as the Creator wanted. So that we find in chapter 13. When we move over to chapter 14, Alter Rebbe explains another detail of this oath. The oath has in it a double expression. Usually in Jewish tradition we're taught, whatever the Torah teaches, and every word, nothing is extra. So why do you tell the soul, be righteous, but do not be wicked? That's self-understood. If you tell somebody, be righteous, it's self-understood. You shouldn't be wicked. Why are you telling the person the double expression? Swear and take an oath that you will be righteous, and you continue saying, and also swear you will not be wicked. It sounds like a redundancy. Says the Alter Rebbe, B'zeh Yuva, now will understand, Kaifo Lashin Ashvua, the double expression of this oath, Tehi Tzadik v'al Tehi Rasha, be righteous, but do not be wicked. The L'chayra Tumua, technically, seems very strange. If you're already making him swear he will not be, the reverse. If you're already making him swear that he's going to be righteous, then why do I have to make him swear and he's not going to be wicked? Obviously, if he's going to be righteous, automatically he won't be wicked. Says the Alter Rebbe, no. Not every person reaches that level of being righteous. We don't even have the free choice to become righteous. Why? Because a tzaddik is somebody who truly has pleasure and delight in godliness. But for the most part, we are all regular human beings, and we also have pleasures and delights from other things in life. So to say that we're all righteous and tzaddik and we're a holy person, it's kind of hard to make that statement because there's a part of us that's a little bit on the dark side. Says the Alter Rebbe, and therefore, and you should achieve a level where you're really, utterly going to despise evil. That's not easy. For the average person, that's not something that we can achieve. So therefore, therefore we give him a second part of the oath. At the very least, don't be wicked. In other words, we say to the human being, do me a favor. When you're going down to earth, you're going to be born soon in your mother's womb. You're going to come out to planet Earth. Strive to be righteous. But if that doesn't work out for you, and you find yourself tempted by the temptations of life, don't worry about it. At least try to make the point, you will not be wicked, you will not act on your impulses, on your temptations. For this, every person has free choice, and you have absolute permission, so to speak. Nobody's blocking you. You have the authority to make that decision and to control your life. Am I going to go along with the temptations and sin of life? Or am I going to lead by my free choice a righteous and a good life? And therefore the Alter Rebbe completes this sentence and he says, you have the power, limshel beruach ta'avose, you can control the desires of your heart, shabiliboy, v'lich b'shitzrei, to conquer your inclination, that you shouldn't be a wicked person in the world of action. You will never do something that is wrong, not even for a one moment throughout your entire life. Whether it comes to staying away from the negative things which we shouldn't do, or whether it comes to doing the positive things that we should do, in both situations, we always have the free choice to make sure we make the right decision. When it comes to chapter 27, the Alter Rebbe is still bothered. How does this Beinoni supposed to, the average person is struggling with life. He's got temptations. It's not easy. The temptations never seem to go away. Even when you fight one battle and you win, another one comes up right away. And this way you seem to be going in a circle that never comes to an end. So how exactly is the human being supposed to be happy? Says the Alter Rebbe in the beginning of chapter 27. If you're upset and down, and you're saddened by the fact that you find yourself having inappropriate thoughts, which are not exactly, shall we say, something you would love to tell everybody about because you'd be ashamed of yourself if you said it to everybody. Says the Alter Rebbe, don't worry about it. And going over to the middle of the page of chapter 27, says the Alter Rebbe like this. Zoisi midas habeinim. This is the way and the character of a beini, of the average person. Vaveidasam, in their way of their service of God. Lichbe shayetzer. They conquer their evil inclination. And all the thoughts which come from the heart, emanate from the heart, and they go up to the mind, and they are successful. They are successful in pushing it completely out of their mind, even when it arises and comes up to their thoughts. And they push it away with two hands. In other words, they don't allow it to be entertained by their mind. Do they have control to tell their mind, don't even think about it? No, they don't. It will come up to the mind involuntarily, because that's human nature, it's normal. And the Alter Rebbe gives you the comfort to know there's nothing wrong with you if you have inappropriate thoughts that are trying to make their way into your mind. The sin is that you continue to entertain them. Once they're in your mind, you can say, okay, this thought came up, what do I do with it? Do I continue thinking about it, or do I push it aside? Says the Alter Rebbe, now you can be considered a Beinoni of Tanya, which is the highest level that we can achieve within reason, and it's a very challenging but absolutely possible to achieve, to live a life of purity and godliness and holiness by choosing the right decision and pushing away all of the inappropriate thoughts that come up to our minds. And as he quotes, Ubechol dechio dechia. The Alter Rebbe gives us great comfort. He says, every push and push, it's a Hebrew expression in a poetic Hebrew. Every time you push, and you push again, and you push again, and you think you're just wasting your time because the more you push away, well, new thoughts flood you anyway. He says, Shematcheo b'machshavte, when you push it away from your mind, you should know, Iskafio sitra achra lesata. You are forcing the forces of evil to be under the control of holiness. And for God, he says, that is the greatest pleasure possible. And he quotes from the prophets who state that God says, if you will rise like an eagle with arrogance, wanting to commit sin, you should know, God says, I will bring you down from there. God is talking to the evil forces of the world, because we have the power to choose as God wants us to do, to choose and make the right decision and live a proper ethical life. And then the Alter Rebbe quotes the famous piece of Zohar, which the Alter Rebbe quotes in many places. In page 128, under the Torah portion of Truma, the Zohar states that the greatest pleasure that God has is the greatest pleasure that God has is when we choose to push away the forces of evil and we put them under the control of the forces of goodness and holiness. To God, that is the greatest pleasure. Why is that the greatest pleasure? So when we turn over and we look a little further, the Alter Rebbe says, first of all, remember as a result of this, never feel down by yourself. Do not be down in your heart. Don't let your heart fall on you. And don't be overly feeling bad about this. Even if you will have this war, this battle raging for all of 120 years of life until Mashiach comes. Why? This may be the very reason that you were born. It could be we were born to give God the pleasure of taking evil and putting it under the control of holiness. So every time we do that consciously, it's not a waste of time. We took another bit of the evil powers of the world and we put it, no longer is it under the power of evil, but from henceforth it's going to be under the power of holiness. And then the Alter Rebbe says, and now we understand why Job, Iyov, it says in the Talmud in Baba Basra, he said to God, it's unfair. You created certain people to be wicked. And as the Alter Rebbe quoted early on in chapter 1, further down on the same page. So if God created us to begin with to be wicked, so what are you complaining to us? We're basically pre-programmed to commit sin. So Job is saying to God, you created us to be wicked, so why are you having any complaints to us? Says the Alter Rebbe, that's not what God says. It doesn't mean that God created us wicked, that we must perform evil deeds. It means it means only in your mind and in your thoughts will you have the same challenges like a wicked person who's tempted by sin, by the temptations of the physical world. But unlike a wicked person who acts on them, we are only like the wicked person. We have the same temptations, but we are not forced to continue and follow through on those temptations. And therefore the Alter Rebbe says that is the beauty of the path of ethics for the average person, to prove to Almighty God that we can choose by our own choice. We weren't pre-programmed to be righteous, but my free choice has the power to transform evil and put it under the control of the forces of holiness. Then the Alter Rebbe brings up a very interesting point. You know, and it's kind of popular today, using an analogy here, people like to eat sushi. Not only they like sushi, but they like the wasabi that comes with it. The wasabi is very sharp, shall we say. You can't sit down and take a spoon and start eating wasabi. And yet, so many people love the wasabi, even though it, so to speak, burns your mouth. But there's a certain pleasure when you eat it. So why are you eating it? If it hurts you and it's sharp and it's burning, so why would you want to take more? Says the Alter Rebbe, there are two types of food. One food is naturally sweet. One food is naturally bitter and sharp and sour. And you can't eat it on its own. You can't take wasabi and hot pepper and just start eating it. But if it's well prepared and it's well proportioned, and you put just the right amount on a food, then not only do you not despise it, but as he says, it brings a sense of restoring your soul. It's like somebody that has some of it, and you'll hear the expression, they're enjoying it. Or you see somebody have a shot of whiskey and they'll make the same expression, because on the one hand, it's powerful, it stings, but somehow it brings out from within a sense of life. It's not the same, but in medicine you also see that smelling salts can revive a soul. So when a person faints and you put the smelling salt to their nose, they can't smell it. On the one hand, it's too powerful, but because it's so powerful, it reaches the depths of the soul and the person comes back to life and to consciousness. And therefore, says the Alter Rebbe, that is why our father Yitzchak, Isaac, before he passed away, asked, bring me delicacies, and he uses the word mat'amim. When Yitzchak wanted to bless his son Esav, and his mother Rivka later switched Yaakov for Esav with the fur hands and so on. But during that story, Yitzchak says, bring me delicacies in the plural. What's the delicacies in the plural? Says the Alter Rebbe in Tanya. That is what it means when we say mat'amim, because just like matamim gashmim, the physical foods, have shnei minim adanim, you have two types of delicacies. Echad v'machalim arevim u'mesukim, one from sweet foods, v'asheni midvarim charifim mechamutzim, from sharp foods or from sour foods. They become powerful enough in delicacies, they revive the soul. So in Judaism, if we can use the expression, we are wasabi oriented. We like a spicy food, and God says, that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for the guy that was created necessarily to be only righteous. Of course he's going to be righteous. He was programmed that way. He doesn't have any temptations in life, so God is enjoying it. To use a practical analogy for that, the teacher that changes the child that was an absolute disaster when the kid walked into the classroom on day one of the school year. And by the time the school year was over, the teacher successfully transformed that child, and now the child walks out a success. The teacher has a deeper appreciation for that child and gratification and satisfaction from that child than the teacher has from the kid who walked in on day one, a quiet genius, never bothered the soul, always got good grades. It's a pleasure to have in the classroom, but there's no challenge. The teacher can't walk away saying, look what I achieved. I put in a years of work and I accomplished something. No, you didn't. You didn't accomplish anything. The kid was a good kid when he walked in, and the kid is a good kid when he's walking out. But the other child who walked in as a troublemaker, and you as a teacher guided that child and inspired that child to change their life and find a better path, as a teacher, that is very gratifying and rewarding. And therefore, in God's world, we, the average person, who is tempted by sin and nevertheless transforms that and goes to the right path, not because we no longer have temptations. That's a tzaddik. That's a righteous, holy person. But the average person who's a Beinoni, he doesn't lose temptation. It's just that he no longer will go through by acting on the evil because he chooses the right path. Then the Alter Rebbe continues this section and he says, and this is what the verse means when it says that Gam Rasha L'Yoim Ra'ah, that God says, I've created everything for my glory, including an evil person, L'Yoim Ra'ah, for a bad day. What does it mean, a bad day? Yoim Ra'ah, a day of bad? The Alter Rebbe says, no, to make day out of bad. When you take an evil person, you transformed his conduct, and you made it L'Yoim, it should be shining brightly like the daylight, and you started off with Ra, with something that was evil, and you went through the transformation from evil to daylight, that's a great satisfaction. But the Alter Rebbe seems to be bothered by this question because his followers were obviously asking him, but Rebbe, this is not easy. We're going through all of life with struggles, year after year, year after year, year after year, and as much as we seem to be working on ourselves, we find ourselves struggling at the same point as we were struggling in the beginning. Says the Alter Rebbe in chapter 35. He says, I would like to at least add a little bit of comfort to those Jews that were born in a way where they always have to struggle to make the right decision. They never seem to graduate from this battle. They're always in a perpetual battle. The Alter Rebbe says in the beginning of chapter 35, to explain a little more, what's the purpose of putting a person into this world and sending the soul down to this world if the soul will forever, so to speak, perpetually have to battle this war? Says the Alter Rebbe, because the fact that they will bring the evil forces under the holy forces, this is the purpose and the pleasure that God has from you. But the Alter Rebbe says, but to give you comfort for this, I will give you nachmasom lanachmam b'kiflayim l'tushia. I will comfort you with a double measure of comfort by quoting the Zohar. And the Zohar says that there was a Yenuka who stated that you have to make sure there's always oil burning on top of our head. We spoke about this in a different session. In other words, we have to make sure that our body, which is like the lump of wax, and our soul, which is the thread of the wick, together in harmony shine brightly by pouring oil, and the oil turns out to be good deeds. So when we take good deeds and we make that our focal point, we bring that into our life, essentially what we're doing is the Alter Rebbe concludes the very last few lines of the Tanya, towards the end of chapter 53. When you do that, then you are transforming the wax and the wick into a flame, and the flame, as the Alter Rebbe says in the very last line of Tanya, Ki Hashem aleikecha eish eichlahu. God is a burning fire, a consuming fire. Eish means fire, eichla, which consumes, which eats. What does it mean? God is an eating fire, so to speak. God is a consuming flame. God is a consuming flame because when it's wax and wick together and they're being consumed, that is when the fire takes hold. So the flame, when you see the actual fire, that's because you're burning calories. You're burning the wick. May God grant us and bless us. We each have a path and a journey. We each have the power to overcome all of our obstacles and all of our challenges. And God says to us, and in case you think that you're wasting your time, you should know you are giving me the greatest pleasure. And if we're giving God the greatest pleasure, that's all that counts. If we're intellectually honest, life is about making life meaningful and transforming the world, preparing the world for Mashiach, when God will be able to come down into the physical world, so to speak, and reveal himself in a way where the world will recognize the beauty and the glory of God. And that is done through our doing and preparing the world for the coming of Mashiach. As the Rebbe says to us, I see that, says the Rebbe, with prophetic vision, that the day of Mashiach's coming is imminent. And by us doing additional acts of goodness and kindness, we hasten that day and we make Mashiach come sooner and faster. May we merit to see that day in good health and in happiness, together with the prayer of we want Mashiach now. Thank you very much for joining.